Hello tribe and welcome back. It has been 5 months now since my diagnosis and starting to take stimulants to help with my ADHD, so I felt I would give an update on my experience so far. When I was diagnosed, I had no idea I could have ADHD, so it came as a bit of a shock and left me with so many questions. I then fell deep into researching it for close to 2 months, spending all of my free time on it. I started taking Vyvanse the day after my diagnosis and had my dose increased slightly a few weeks later. I've been on 40 milligrams ever since, and it still seems like the proper dose for me. I have also gotten in the habit of taking a day off from them every week. I tend to use that day as my do-nothing day, where I can just relax, play games, watch movies, and not feel bad about it. I also find that gives me somewhat of a reset when I do take them again the next day, as I'll feel the effects more prominently again. Overall, my experience taking Vyvanse has been a positive one. My hyperactivity mostly manifests in my mind, giving me thoughts that never seem to stop rolling at an intense rate. It's like my mind is a vehicle I often have very little control over, from the speed or where it takes me. For the most part, it feels like the stimulants put me in the driver's seat. I now have much more control of the speed, velocity, and the direction. I used to deal with sometimes crippling anxiety and depression, greatly due to overthinking myself into holes. But now, at least when taking the medication, when those feelings arise, it's almost like they are down a level under everything else I feel. They are no longer the biggest central feeling I have when they appear, and no longer overpower every other emotion and thought. Those feelings are still there for sure, but seem to be a lot more manageable. If I notice myself latching on to a certain negative train of thought, I can just stop thinking about it. Whereas before, the more I became aware of it, the more I'd think about it. Another way they have helped, which I did not see coming, is that I'm eating much better and more healthy than I was before taking them. Before taking Vyvanse, I would often feel exhausted after work, or like I just couldn't spare the time or energy to spend a half hour to an hour every night to cook a good healthy meal. So I often relied on eating things that were quick to make but also filling, which were usually not the best quality or ingredients, which of course left me not feeling the best and with low energy levels. I find now I am much better at focusing on what I need to do and planning ahead. So as I mentioned in my 15 useful techniques video, I now plan ahead and set the time aside to cook one big healthy meal that will last me the week and that I can freeze some for a later date as well. I was also addicted to sugar, consuming it all the time, especially when I was feeling down and oftentimes before bed, as it would actually help me sleep. It wasn't until recently that I realized how little sugar I've been eating and craving since starting on the stimulants. I then realized that when eating sugar, it releases large surges of dopamine in the brain. If you're familiar with how ADHD works, you may know that it is largely associated with low levels of dopamine. It's due to the lack of dopamine that we are always on the hunt for more stimulating things that will release dopamine in the brain. Thus, our often low attention span is more due to a lack of stimulation and our brain actively pushing us to seek out more. I have also found that my ability to procrastinate is much lower. For example, I have had one large personal project on my plate for 3 years now. There are people who have been waiting on it, but there was no due date or pressure to get it done besides what I put on myself. I made some progress on it over the last few years, but was still in the fairly early stages of working on it. I managed to finally complete the project in the last 3 months. It took a lot of time and dedication. That said, sometimes I could only bear to work on it for a few minutes, and other times I would hyper-focus for 6 hours straight. But it was the ability to be consistent and not put things off that allowed me to be able to complete it. The stimulants have helped a lot and in many other ways as well, but I feel a lot of these positives came from also having a personal want to do better. I can't say for sure, but I feel if I didn't have that underlying desire to do better, as well as good resources and supportive people, it could have been different. And it has in no way been all sunshine and rainbows. Stimulants help you focus, but they don't help what you focus on, so I have definitely lost large chunks of time and complete days to putting my focus on the wrong things. When I first started taking them, I had recently become unemployed, and so I was dealing with that shock as well as my diagnosis. I didn't know what to do with myself, so I ended up starting my day with video games a lot. If there's one thing that I have noticed, it's that whenever the medication kicks in, whatever I put my focus on first can easily become a hyperfocus. So doing something not overly productive and already super stimulating like gaming first thing would lead to a hard time stopping. And when I did manage to stop, my brain was so stimulated from the game that it was as if the world had a fog over it. Anything less stimulating was impossible to focus on, and the whole day would basically be a wash. So something I call delaying gratification has helped a lot with that, which is the act of delaying gratifying, stimulating things that you want to do until after you have finished the less stimulating tasks you want to complete in a day. I also absolutely had side effects. I have always had issues clenching my jaw, so that was already there for me. The stimulants just made it a lot more chronic at first. I was able to get past it by doing daily TMJ exercises and stretches and haven't had much jaw pain since. The lack of appetite was super strong at first, to the point I actually had to force myself to make food and eat or I wouldn't have. But that subsided after a couple of weeks and I seem to be back to normal. Although now I just crave healthier food as opposed to junk food. What I didn't expect when starting to take stimulants was that there would be a learning curve of things you should and shouldn't do. For instance, I had several days where the medication felt like it had zero effect and I could not figure out why. After doing some research, I found out that it's recommended to avoid taking acidic foods and drinks within an hour before and after taking it, as it can decrease its effectiveness. And of course, I was drinking coffee with my breakfast before taking it a lot of the time. And then there was coffee. Oh, coffee, how I love thee. As stimulants stimulate you in a similar way to coffee, drinking a coffee or any other caffeinated beverage while taking the medication can multiply its effects by a lot. I of course found this out the hard way. Blasting off into space had never seemed so real or possible. But with a huge boost of energy like that will always come a crash. And crash I did. I felt horrible that night and the whole next day struggled to keep my eyes open. Not to mention the combo made my heart beat so incredibly hard, I was worried I was going to have a heart attack, so best to avoid. I would also like to note that they aren't like antidepressants where you'll need to wait a few weeks to feel the effects. You'll likely know right away if they do anything for you. I always felt like I had so much potential but could never reach it, like it was always out of my grasp and I never knew why or how to change that. I would get brief moments of feeling like I'm on the right track or living up to it, only to have it fade away once I hit a day where I couldn't bring myself to do anything. As of now, I feel like I'm finally able to tap into that feeling and reaching my full potential is within my reach. So all in all, things are going great. The first month wasn't the smoothest start for various reasons, but I've been ironing out the wrinkles and finding a path that works for me. But that's just it. It's all about finding a path that works for you. I am extremely thankful to all the people out there spreading information about ADHD and stimulants, as there are definitely stigmas and misinformation that come from taking stimulants as well as a lot of other medications as well. So I hope this truthful look into my experience is helpful, as they have absolutely changed my life for the better. That's all for this video. Until next time.